Hello, I'm LaDonna Boyd, CEO of R.H. Boyd Publishing Corporation, and I'll be bringing you the Sunday School lesson for March 22nd entitled Doing Justice. The lesson comes from the Adult Christian Life Sunday School and Small Group Study Guide. The lesson comes from the book of Micah, specifically chapters 3 through 6. The book of Micah is the 6th in the 12 minor prophets of the Old Testament. The short book focuses on the importance of legality and justice. And in chapters 3 through 6, Israel's rulers are accused of misappropriating resources meant for the poor, and they're doing this to gain wealth and power. God accuses Israel of breaking their covenant with him, and the people want to learn how to get back on God's good side. We see in our key verse, which is Micah chapter 6, verse 8, "He has told you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God." In this lesson, we will examine God's accusations, the verdict, and the sentence handed down upon the leadership of the people of Judah. In the key verse, human beings were guilty of violating God's holy ordinance. God had shown them how to live appropriately toward him and one another. His demonstration showed them that they were to live for him for long term. So the first question that I want to ask, if you were being put on trial for being a poor example of Christianity, what would your verdict be? All of us can fall short of the glory, and we fall short of what's expected of us, but we all receive justice from the Lord. This lesson parallels our everyday life in so many ways. It's talking about corrupt leadership, which I'm sure that we've all learned examples of. It's hard to imagine having all the resources that God has given to you, but to exploit that. But many of us are guilty of doing that on a smaller level on an everyday basis. How are we exploiting and not using our spiritual gifts? How are we taking advantage of God's goodness and his grace? Whether you're in a leadership position or not, it's easy to fall short of what's expected of us. However, God does provide corrective instruction and forgiveness to each of us. In the lesson, the treasury of the nation was being depleted, and so little was left for the poor. All that was remained was for God to provide his final verdict. In Micah 3, verses 1 through 4, it says, "Listen, you leaders of Jacob, you rulers of Israel. Should you not embrace justice? You who hate good and love evil, who tear the skin of my people and the flesh of their bones, who eat my people's flesh, strip off their skin and break their bones in pieces, who chop them up like meat for the pan, like flesh for the pot. Then they will cry out to the Lord, but he will not answer them. At that time he will hide his face from them, because of the evil that they have done." The wicked and the corrupt leaders had enriched themselves by oppressing those over whom they had been given responsibility to care, and their punishment was harsh. As it says on page 74 of Adult Christian Life, to the wicked and corrupt leaders who had enriched themselves by oppressing those over whom they had been given the responsibility to care, their verdict was harsh. The priests who had been able to minister before the very face of God in the temple would find that God was going to hide his face from them. The prophets whose ministry relied upon visions given to them by God would find that the light of those visions was going to go as dark as night. The rulers who had built strong fortifications and lavished splendor on the backs of the people who would see Zion plowed as a field and Jerusalem become a heap of ruins. Even the temple that represented the presence and blessing of God would become just another woodland hilltop. The covenant people of God, along with all the blessings of that relationship, would be handed over to the apostates, leaving the people of Judah nothing but to wail and lamentation. So again, I go back to the previous question. If each of us were to receive a verdict based on how we uphold our Christian values and principles, what exactly would that look like? What does God's corrective instruction look like for you in your everyday life? Micah's role in the lesson is to speak on God's behalf, and again, the people wanted to know how can they get on God's good side, if you will. And restating the key verse, which again is Micah chapter 6, verse 8, "He has told you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with God." So how do we walk humbly with God? What does it mean to die to ourselves and to forgo our humanly desires and to truly walk in a pathway that focuses on righteousness and focuses on a right relationship with the Lord? And how do we maintain this right relationship with the Lord when we see that there's so much going on around us? And sometimes those that are perpetuating evil are the ones reaping the current rewards, but we know that their rewards will not last always. However, those that have a relationship with God will have eternal life and eternal justice and be able to walk through the gates of heaven. When Jesus walked the earth, he left a very poignant phrase in John chapter 16, verse 33. It says, "In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." He said these words to bring us comfort and peace. And I want for all of us to meditate on that, especially in times like these when we see trials and tribulations on the news, at the polls, in our local and federal government and leadership. It's hard to maintain a sense of morality when people around you are not always upholding those values, but again, reaping those earthly rewards. But we have to remember that our rewards are not money. We cannot exploit those who have less than us to uplift ourselves. Nothing good will come from that. So what is it that keeps you grounded? How do you focus on maintaining the path and the course to righteousness? We would love to hear your thoughts. Please share with us on our social media channels. You can tag us at RH Boyd Co. We would love to continue the conversation as well as highlight some of the feedback that we receive. And in closing, on page 75 of the lesson, we give ourselves to God because He is God and He both demands of us and deserves from us our submission to His eternal kingship. Having done that, we place ourselves under obligation to do as God desires. Part of that is to do justice, love kindness, and walk in humble obedience to Him. Once we do these, we can have the hope of the promise that He has left to us, to eternal life and to live in the kingdom with Him. Again, this is LaDonna Boyd doing a lesson for March 22nd. I hope that you've enjoyed this. And again, share your feedback with us and check out all of our social media pages and our website for future lessons.